Welcome to SwitchCorner, my name is Alex, and today we're going to be taking a look at Dawn of the Monsters on the Nintendo Switch, a kaiju-infused beat-em-up. Is it going to be worth your time, or should you spend your cash elsewhere in the genre? Well, hit subscribe, but join us here on SwitchCorner for reviews and deals near daily, and let's get started. The story then is relatively generic given its themes, but I mostly enjoyed it. Creatures known as the Nephilim, they've invaded Earth, and the only hope of stopping them, a program called Dawn, or Defense Alliance Worldwide Network. It's an organization that has created its own kaiju to face this war head on, and you'll be controlling one of four on offer. That's Megadon, Ganira, Aegis, and Tempest. Each though also has its own pilot as well, who will be the focus of the story itself over what is a surprisingly lengthy campaign. It took me right around 7 hours to get through all of the story content on offer, and you can expect the locations to take you all over the world. The predominant focus, that's Toronto, Brazil, Egypt and Tokyo. The only issue I really had with the story is it's well written, no question, ticking all the genre boxes, but it felt a little bit padded out, and it could have definitely been streamlined. Some scenes almost they feel nice to see, but I'm not sure they were absolutely necessary. For those that want to go really deep then as well, it even has an option to visit specific locations on your base just for simply a chat. Gameplay then, and for the most part it's a relatively traditional beat 'em up. In the opening moments, the game will quickly run you through the controls to open the game, but think here a light attack, heavy attack, which you can also hold for more power, a dash attack, a dodge, the ability to interact, so think picking up buildings and whacking or throwing them at your enemy, and then you can guard as well. Some attacks though are going to be too powerful for your guard and will cause a break, but this game is very generous with its mechanics and your ability to stay alive, and that's mainly thanks to the game's invincibility frames. If you dodge at the right time, you'll be good, or if you start an execution even. This is when a bee flashes over an opponent's head. This will basically kick in an animation and no damage around you will matter. That execution in turn then, with the right setup, it actually increases your health bar too. I'll say it now as well off the back of that, I'd say this is quite a bit easier than many in the genre. If you looked at, let's say, Streets of Rage or Scott Pilgrim, this is nowhere near that ramp. It's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think it's down to the theme. This is for kaiju fans first and foremost while being accessible, but no, it may be a good option for those that, maybe want something a little bit easier going, or with a little bit of extra depth over the traditional setup. The game overall though has a relatively strong setup. Honestly, the combat is fluid, and you can even cancel out moves here if you require a switch at the last second, think like a dodge. You have then rage attacks which are attached to the left trigger. These are kind of flashy as you would hope, but do some serious damage. Each character eventually will get 3 each, that's going to be the left trigger and the face button. Beat enemies though earn points to use these, and they're noted under the health bar in the top left of the screen. It's the boxes. And then the bigger meter underneath health, that's actually a super special, or as the game puts it, a cataclysm attack. The 4 playable characters as well, you can switch on the fly. You'll actually choose opening each level, and each definitely feels a little different. Some slow, some fast, unique movesets, and you'll be able to match your style. I went with Aegis because I like the speed he possessed, and he was able to dodge attacks at my pace perfectly. I do miss the fact none of the characters can jump, honestly. I know it makes sense for them not to jump, but it was definitely a dynamic of the genre which I always enjoy. Outside of that though, expect to find weapons around this world, mainly buildings and electrical wires, but occasionally we'll mix it up. Think water stations, weapons the army left behind, or objects that are a bit more thematically correct for the environment we are in. One example, we find ourselves in a jungle in a river and it's big old stones. You can also then push enemies into items for damage, and there's some minor status effects as well if you or an enemy steps on the wrong thing. In the game then, the only other thing I'd say, high score chasing, and there's also a handy meter in the top right which shows you how your rank is looking for that particular level. It's a nice visual, and no doubt the main way the game is trying to draw you back in for multiple runs. The mission select screen then as well, it also shows your previous high score. The minor RPG side of the game then comes in a few forms as a workshop where you can buy new skins alongside upgrades with cash earned. Think health bar upgrades and rage upgrades. I'm not one for skins honestly, but it's a nice touch and it didn't ask me for my credit card, which is honestly a bonus in 2022. Finally, you will learn in battle augments, and you can attach 3 to each of our warriors. These are essentially buffers, and you'll earn a ton of them in game as they level up individually as well. My setup was generally health restoring focused, and then maybe a simple land light attacks increase your heavy attack buffer. It's a nice spin, but I didn't honestly think about it until the last world or so. No doubt it would have made my life easier, but I wouldn't say they make a huge impact on the way the game plays. I think this though is a byproduct of a problem I have with the game. It feels a little overlong in its current state. It's over 30 levels this one, around 7 or 8 levels attached to each world. It ends up kind of feeling repetitive. You know, often these are really small bite-sized kind of locations, maybe 4 or 5 minutes each. They should have been combined together rather than interrupting so you can add moments of dialogue. That length as well impacts the game in a few ways. You realise how limited the weapons are in their variety, you know, buildings, electrical wires, not much else. You realise that the enemies are pretty repetitive with a new one every so often, but sometimes it's just a simple colour swap. And then the difficulty ramp feels very slow. I felt like the first 10 or so levels were an absolute breeze, and it was kind of getting a little bit stale, but it finally decided to start dialing things up on me. Another issue as well, this is a decent world and walking through it is no question epic, but I did start to see that enemies, they weren't all that good at navigating, you know, the standing buildings, and on 2 occasions I had enemies get stuck off screen and I could not do anything about it. Once they are on screen then as well, you can push them near all the way off. This needed invisible walls to keep the action visible. It's pretty frustrating when an enemy with the ability to fire does it from off screen and you have absolutely no chance. Finally, for issues, there's a few hitboxes that are just slightly off. You're going to need to learn them. A few of the enemies' attacks, mainly ones that are kind of like a bomb formation, a circle on the ground, they would hit me even though I was quite a bit out of the radius of the damage meter. Then there's a repeating theme in its big final boss, that is, they are nests. The problem I noticed, firing enemies can shoot straight through them and hit you, which is a pain because my strategy was go to the other side of the nest, attack, and let these monsters come to me. The problem, they didn't need to, or at least that one particular enemy type didn't need to. They could do damage still from afar. Graphically then, I really like it. The 4 leads look fantastic, each with their own animation, and this is clearly made by fans for fans, and that is something I always respect. Each packs their own unique animations, and I particularly like a few of the specials. There are a couple which make the screen go completely black, and that feels a little kind of out of place and unusual, like I really want to see what's happening in these moments. Then the worlds, I do like the designs, a highlight being traversing a river in Brazil as waves head towards you, but they suffer from the same issue that the game is pretty long and each level kind of starts to blend into the next because visually there's very little to differentiate one from the next when it comes to the worlds. Buildings then finally crumbling beneath you, that feels epic. It's a really nice touch, and the menu and the dialogue sections, they are particularly nice in a cartoon style way. Audio finally, and I love the fact it's fully voice acted. First off, it does a huge amount for any game, and in the case of this one, the tone of the delivery feels perfect. It makes for a cast with more personality than most, and that's important here because you need to care about the pilots as well, and you don't often, well, you never really see them on screen in gameplay. The music was a little disappointing though, honestly. It just felt a little paint by numbers for me. It just wasn't memorable, and I didn't feel like it really added anything. It felt like it was more background audio than there for the purpose of elevating the scenario at hand, and we're talking about big old monsters crushing cities. This could have been truly epic. So the final verdict and Dawn of the Monsters offers a whole lot of gameplay, way more than I expected, and again this is clearly made with a whole lot of love and passion. You'll see that from the moment you boot it up. It's a well thought out story, voice acting, a solid cast, and a creative enough control scheme. It's just sadly not without its issues. The length impacts the difficulty curve, the story feels a little bit slow at points, there's a few issues like those edge of screen problems and attacks coming from an enemy, and generally repetition visually just started to get to me. That said though, Kaiju fans, it's an absolute must buy for you, and beat 'em up fans, I think it's going to be worth a look, but don't come here necessarily for that next big challenge, rather more a slow and steady curve where you'll have some fun, and it may be a good one to introduce those new to the genre with. It's for sure a breeze though compared to some of its counterparts outside of that last world where it really starts to dial things up. There's no question though, the invincibility frames here will make you feel like an absolute badass. A good 7 out of 10 from me today, and it's for sure getting a recommendation. Will you be adding this one to the library or holding onto that cash? A shout out then to the patrons of the channel who are going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. It helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we will do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.